every evening when Dad would get home from working in the fields, he would run up to him, chores were done, dinner's taken care of. He would go to his dad and they would snuggle up, and he would want to hear stories about what life was like back home for Dad when he lived with Grandma and Grandpa, whom he'd never met. Maybe he would want to hear stories about how Dad got to the location that he's at now, and how he met his mom, how Dad met Mom for the first time, and the feelings that Dad must have felt. And then the hard work that Dad had to do to try to marry Mom for 7 years, and then come to find out Grandpa did a little trick move on him and replaced Mom with somebody else, with his stepmom, which would become his stepmom. And you got stepmom, mom, and stepmom in the house now. And so it's a little bit confusing. But he was the favored son. He was the one that Jacob would spend all of his time with. Any extra time he had was always spent with his son Joseph for a long time, until Benjamin came along. It was Jacob and Joseph. And hearing stories about what life was like, and I'm just wondering, as a little boy, what kind of an impact would everything be towards a little boy at this time? A little boy growing up in this environment with mom, stepmom, and stepmom, with so many brothers, with one sister, with a dysfunctional grandpa and dad relationship, grandpa and daughter's relationship, mothers to him, grandpa and that family relationship. So much so that, he saw how much his dad worked. He saw how much Jacob worked, and so much so that he knew that his dad was tired. He knew that his dad was getting worn down all these years working in the fields. And so when the time came for them to leave, and leave quickly, what kind of impact does that have on a little boy when Dad comes in and Mom, and they say, it's time for us to leave, and we need to leave now. Let's go. Pack up your stuff. Only what we can find. Only what we can carry, and let's get on with this thing. And we got to leave right now. At the dead of night, let's go. It's time to leave. Grandpa's away. We're going to go. And to leave quickly in that, and to feel the adrenaline, to feel the fear of having to leave something, a place that you've never left before. You've heard stories about what life is like back where Jacob used to live, but you don't know. You don't know what's going to be awaiting you there. And as a little boy, how do you handle that? And then to see Grandpa in the distance coming up to them, and in that whole exchange with Jacob and Laban, and how difficult that must have been to see Dad stand his ground against Grandpa. You've never seen that ever before. Your dad's more of a quiet type, more of just to get the work done, do what you got to do to make sure that your family's provided for. But then to finally see Dad lose his cool and just lay out to Grandpa everything that's going on, and wonder what the response is going to be, because you've never had that close relationship with Grandpa. He's always been more about the work than anything else, and so hasn't really connected very much. And then to give your Grandpa a hug as he leaves goodbye. The relief that must have felt, because you see it in your dad's eyes, you see it in your mom's eyes, that we can finally put this behind us. And then to have word come that Dad's brother, your uncle, whom you've never met, but you've heard the stories about, that old Uncle Esau wanted to kill Dad. And so Dad fled, that he's on his way, and he's got 400 men. The fear that would be in a little boy's eyes, like, oh my word, what's happening? What's going to happen to Dad? What's going to happen to us? And you see your dad start to take the initiative and say, okay, people, we're going to send the servants ahead. Maybe these are some of your friends, some of these animals that you got connected with, close with, that have to go on ahead. And you don't know if you're ever going to see these friends again. You're never going to know if you're going to see these servants again, at least in a little boy's eyes. Like, they've got to go ahead and meet with Esau to try to soften the blow for when Esau finally meets Dad. And saying goodbye to that, seeing your dad scheme all of that out. And then camp, just you and your mom, while your dad's on the other side of the river. And then that morning you see Dad walking across the river with a limp, and you don't know what's happened, and he tells you, he says, son, I just wrestled an angel, and things are going to be different now. And you believe your dad that things are going to be different. And you see that things are different with your dad, because now instead, this whole trip, he's been behind you. This time he's ahead of you. And you're in the back with Mom. It's just you and Mom. And you can see brothers. You see your sister. You see your stepmoms. And you see your dad. And you see the embrace of dad and what you assume is Uncle Esau. You never met him before, but your dad said he was a hairy man, and you saw that hairy man hugging your dad. Oh, the relief that must have been felt. How do you handle that as a little boy, seeing your dad this way? And then finally settled in a town, you feel like you've got everything taken care of. Then all of a sudden one day, your sister's missing. You don't know where she went. And you see your brothers take care of things that you didn't think was even possible. And you hear stories about what your brothers have done. What kind of an impact does that have on a little boy? And Joseph is being raised in this family of completely messed up family. What does it look like for a little boy who really loves his dad, who looks up to his dad? Man, we've seen this series, right? Why This Family? We've looked at this series and we've said, how in the world did this family, why is this the chosen family that God is going to send Jesus through the line of Judah that we're going to find out later on? The line of Judah, how in the world, why in the world did God choose this family? Why this family? And we see it through that perspective, but think about looking at it through Joseph's perspective. He knows nothing else. How does someone like Joseph, how does a good man come out of such a messed up family? And it's in Genesis 37 that we get the actual introduction to who Joseph is. We get this introduction to this man. He's 17 years old at the time. We get this introduction into Joseph, and in a couple of weeks we're going to be in a new series that's all about Joseph, because the whole last 39 through 50 is all about Joseph. But we've got 2 more weeks of Why This Family. I wish we could start our series on Joseph this week, but we can't, because Genesis 38 goes and does another Why This Family, probably the most Why This Family that I've preached on for this series. I know we've done a few doozies. And I'm not looking forward to that one. It's not as heavy as what happened in 34, but it's still difficult to preach through. And I just want to say, it's no coincidence that we're starting our kids ministry during the service on Genesis 38 next week, and that's so we don't have to try to explain to children what 38 means and all of this stuff that's going to be in 38. So parents, if you're a little bit apprehensive about bringing your kids to the brewery, know that we are going to have a kids program for them. It's going to start next week in Genesis 38, but this week, we're in 37, and we get to see who Joseph is. And how did such a good man come out of such a messed up family? And we're going to find that out in the weeks ahead. But we're in 37 right now, and we're going to be in verse 1 to start things out. So let's just get to it, shall we? Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Sorry, you guys didn't get to see that verse at all. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. So we got a few things that go on here. We've got context of what's happening in this family in these first 4 verses of Genesis 37. It says that this is the generations of Jacob, and then it goes just to Joseph. And so we're immediately brought into the story of Joseph being 17 years old, and kind of the family dynamic that's happening between Jacob, Joseph, and then all of the brothers. Now we know right now that the brothers are murderers, they covet, and they hate truth. Okay, so that's who the brothers are, and that's who Joseph is not. Joseph is a guy who stands for truth. He's a trustworthy person. He's a good person. Like I said, I don't know how he made it out of this family with a reputation intact as a good human being. So there's a few things that are going on here. Number one, Joseph was put in charge of his brothers. He was a supervisor of his brothers. When it talks about this coat, the robe of many colors, it's a tunic. There's a couple of different meanings to this. Number one, if you were a worker in the field, that meant that your tunic was a little bit, well, it probably went down to the knees. That's about it. And it didn't have sleeves on it. What they're saying with this robe, with this tunic, is it had sleeves that went down to the wrist, and it went all the way down to your ankles. And so this was a special tunic that set this person apart, whoever was wearing this, set them apart from the rest of the workers. It meant that you were a supervisor. It meant that you were a symbol of princely standing. It meant that you had favor. It meant that you had the birthright. But here in this context, it means that you were the supervisor. And so Joseph is the supervisor, put in charge over his brothers. And this is an issue for his brothers. This is an issue. And when I read this before, when I was like a kid or even like just a little bit ago, when I first started studying this, and you read this passage, you think, okay, Joseph is a little bit of a tattletale, right? Like he's one of those kids who just can't help but tell on his brothers whenever they do something wrong. You probably have a sibling that does the same thing. That's not what's happening here. See, Joseph was put in charge of his brothers, and so when he has a bad report to their father, they get mad at him, but it's his job. He's the supervisor. He's doing his job. He sticks out like a sore thumb because he's the only trustworthy person here. Like I said, his brothers are murderous, covetous people, and they don't want anything to do with someone who's good. See, Joseph is not in good company here. Joseph's a good man, or a good teenager at this time, lacks tact, a little bit naive, but he's a good person. And I think that's an application for us today as well, is like we are going to stand out to people. If we're following Jesus, if we're following truth, there's going to be bad people around us who don't like what we're doing because we look different. Jesus says that if you follow me, you are going to be hated, but take heart, because they hated me first, and I will overcome the world. I probably mixed a few verses together there, but Jesus said that they will hate you. If you follow me, they're going to hate you because they hated me. Know that they hated me first, is what Jesus said. So we're going to look different to the world around us. That's going to bring some tension to people around us. When we're doing the right thing and everybody else is doing the wrong thing, you don't want to get called out like that. And so basically that's what's happening here. The brothers see that dad loves him more. He's got the better position. He's got the birthright. And they don't like him for it. They're jealous. And they can't speak nice. It's like whenever he comes into the room and it's like, ugh, Joseph is here again. It's like whenever we go to the grocery store and we see somebody that we don't want to see, we go the other way, right? You take the cart and you go down an aisle that you didn't even want to go down in the first place. But you're like, sure, I guess I could use some Campbell's soup, I guess. I needed cereal, but now I'm in the soup aisle because somebody's over there. Is that just me? I don't know. But you know the thing, like when you see somebody coming and you're just like, oh, I don't want to deal with that person right now. Like you can't find the right words to say. You know you wouldn't say anything nice, so you just go a different direction. That's how it is with the brothers. All right, I've spent a lot of time already. Let's keep going because we got a lot to get through. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. His brothers said to him, are you indeed to reign over us? Or are you indeed to rule over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you? And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. Now, if we can say anything against Joseph at this point, it would be a lack of tact. Like I said, he's probably a naive kid at 17 years old and thinks that the world is rainbows and unicorns and everything is going to come to him anyway. I mean, when your dad treats you the way that he does, and you're a favorite child, you know you're a favorite child. I don't think he's rubbing this in his brother's face. I think he just has no, what's the word I'm looking for? I also have to sneeze. He has no, what's the word? What's the word I'm looking for? He has no regard for what his brothers are going to be, what they might experience when he tells them this story. So he lacks tact in this moment on Joseph's part. There's a lack of awareness and feelings of what this would do to his brothers and to his dad. It's from God. It's true. Like, there's truth to these dreams. This is something that God gave him, but it doesn't mean that he has to go and share it to everyone who he comes into contact with. Just because we have some good news about us, things that are happening to us, doesn't mean that everybody has to hear about it. We need to take into account what someone is going to respond with when we tell them something. We've got something great going on in our lives. That's awesome. Not everyone wants to hear it. Great news is great news. That's good. Just remember who you're telling it to, right? Yeah. Anyway, we're going to keep going. Now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them. And he said to him, Here I am. So he said to him, Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a man found him wandering in the fields, and the man asked him, What are you seeking? I am seeking my brothers, he said. Tell me, please, where are they pasturing the flock? And the man said, They have gone away, for I heard them say, Let us go down to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. So Joseph goes to try to find his brothers. This was a bit of a journey. Like, Dothan is probably 14, 15 miles to the, I believe it's to the west of Shechem. So what he thinks is happening here, this is not just a quick, I'm just going to run right over to the store real quick, see what my brother's doing. It's not, I'm going to go out to the barns real quick, see what my brothers are doing. It's, I've got to pack some supplies. I'm going to be gone for a couple of days to go see what my brothers are doing, because it's his job to supervise his older brothers, which is, again, an issue to his brothers, right? Because it's like this. If you have siblings as a kid or like growing up, let's say that, or you could use this in the workplace. Let's just say that everyone had chores to do except one kid. And it's the one kid that mom and dad like more than anybody else. Like, he gets away with everything. He doesn't have chores. And so he gets to play video games while you guys are all doing the work, right? And then what's worse is your parents put that kid, that brother, the younger brother, in charge of you and to make sure you do your chores right. You wouldn't be excited to see him, right? You wouldn't be excited that, oh, look, there's a brother coming. This is great, right? You already have resentment against him because he's the favored one, and now he has this position to go above you and to supervise what you're doing. You have to do chores, and then you have a younger brother that doesn't do any chores, that has a nice long coat, nice long whatever, and doesn't get his hands dirty, but will tell you when you're doing something wrong. And what's worse is tell your dad. That's a problem. That's a problem. Here's what the brothers do. They saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams. Like I said, you get somebody in there, like the brothers have this jealousy, bitterness welling up inside of them because of who their brother is, because of the favored stature that he has. And remember, they don't really respect their dad that much at this point either. Remember back to 34. I don't want to go all the way back there, but remember how that ended. It didn't end well. The brothers had to stand up for the sister, and dad wasn't around to do it. So there's a lack of respect from the brothers to dad, and now when dad appoints the youngest one, not quite the youngest one, was the youngest one, Joseph, when he appoints Joseph to take over, it's like, I don't respect Dad, and now by association, I don't respect my brother. He's saying these dreams, he's saying this stuff. I'm not validating a single thing that the brothers are doing. I'm just saying, I don't think it's that far removed from what we feel sometimes when people are put in positions over us that we don't feel that they deserve it. Again, I don't think what the brothers do is right. It's very, very wrong. I don't think Joseph is wrong either. I think we have a messed up family. These brothers have killed before, and so they're ready to kill again. There's a plan put in place to kill the brother, to kill Joseph. Keep going, Brian. Verse 21, but when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, let us not take his life. And Reuben said to them, shed no blood, throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that I might rescue him out of their hand to restore him to his father. What happens is Reuben, just real quick, Reuben was a guy who fell out of favor with Dad, because Reuben decided to have relations with one of Dad's concubines. That was in 35. If you want to check it out, Clayton preached on 35, and you can go listen to it or watch it, or you can just read 35 for yourself. Reuben fell out of favor with Dad when that happened, and I wonder if this is an opportunity for Reuben to be like, this is my chance to be a savior, to save Joseph, and to save face in front of the brothers, right? So, like, I'm gonna be able to still have the respect of my brothers, and I'll be able to find favor again with Dad. I'm going to get in the right standing with Dad. So I'm going to come back, rescue him, bring him back, be like, look, I found Joseph. He's fine. Let's see. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore. And they took him and threw him into a pit. And the pit was empty. There was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat. And this is the depravity of the brothers right now. It says later on in the chapter that, and we're going to get to it, not today, that he was crying for help. Joseph was crying for help, and they could hear him. The brothers could hear Joseph crying for help, and they just sat down and had a meal. Do you ever just lose your sense of your appetite? Do you ever just lose your appetite if something horrible goes on? Like, especially for people, like if it's a funeral, any of that kind of stuff, like you have to keep reminding people to eat, because when you're grieving, when things are going wrong, when there's a lot of stress, when life is getting in the way, people tend to forget to eat. It's just, I don't know why, but we just, I'm not hungry, I don't want to eat, and we have to be forced basically to eat. They have no problem whatsoever with what they're doing. Their hearts are so hardened right now, they're so anti their brother, anti their dad, that this doesn't bother them at all. There's a boy, 17-year-old boy, crying in a well, not far away, not far away, and they do nothing. They don't feel anything. They just sit down and eat. Well, we might as well have dinner. I said the brothers are not good people. And the one good person is thrown into a pit. Let's keep going. And looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, what profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. And his brothers listened to him. And then Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt. So the brothers basically say, oh, you know what? Oh, let's not kill him. What profit are we going to get from that? We could actually get rid of our brother, have a clean conscience, and make some money on the side. We could have 20 pieces of silver. They sell him for 20 shekels of silver. And that's what he's worth to the brothers. They said, we can make a profit on this whole ordeal. Instead of killing him, let's at least get ahead here. And, he is our brother, so maybe we shouldn't kill him. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, the boy is gone. And where shall I go? Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in the blood. And they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, this we have found. Please identify whether or not it is your son's robe, whether it is your son's robe or not. And they identified it and said, it is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins. And mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, no, I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning. Thus his father wept for him. I cannot speak enough to how badly the sons are acting, how poorly they are, like how awful these people are. Not only did they hate Joseph and want to kill him and then plan to kill him, but then be like, let's not kill the guy. Let's make money off of this deal. Not only do they do that, and sit down to have a meal while he's still in the pit crying for help, having no remorse whatsoever, have their meal, then realize there's some traders coming, let's sell him. That's bad enough. But then to continue on with the lie, to see your dad completely break down. Knowing that he's alive. That's what's left. I don't get that, you guys. How does somebody do that? How do you hate someone so much that you'll let them believe a lie? The brothers could rescue their dad from this torment. It says that all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him. But he refused to be comforted. They knew the peace that was going to save them. They knew the peace that was going to save Dad from all of this misery. All they had to do was say, he's not dead. But they would have been implicated in it. Sometimes when we have something at stake, we refuse to get involved. No matter what it's going to do for someone else. It's like, no, that's going to make me look bad. I'm not ready for those repercussions. Oh, one more verse. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. I only throw that verse in there because it's the last verse, and it's going to set up what happens 2 weeks from now. So we're probably going to have to do a recap on this 2 weeks from now, because next week we have 38. Then in 39, we continue on the story of Joseph, and we're going to be starting a brand new series called Detours and Delays. And this basically sums up the life of Joseph. It was detour after detour. It was delay after delay. Remember, he had this dream that he was going to he was going to be the ruler, essentially. And he tells his brothers, and there's a detour here. But through the detours and the delays is where we find God. And so we're going to be doing this series, Detours and Delays. It's all going to be on the life of Joseph. We're going to start that, like I said, in 2 weeks. And that verse 36 sets up the rest of Joseph's story. So we're going to remember that. The Midianites had sold him in Egypt. Joseph is now in Egypt. And that's chapter 37. That's chapter 37. And it doesn't make much sense to us. Joseph is the only good one in this group. And I don't know if you're like me. Sometimes you're like, I don't understand why the good guy has to continue getting the short end of the stick. Which is what it seems like sometimes. Joseph has gone through a lot. Some of it his own doing, but most of this is just because his brothers hate him because of the person that he is. And we've all probably experienced something where it just doesn't seem like our experiences are adding up to something. It seems like we should have more. It seems like our lives should have turned out differently. But our first point is this, that our experience shapes us to God's purpose. Our experience shapes us to God's purpose. The things that we have going on in our lives. Now, I don't want to give the ending away, but think about this. Our experience shapes us to God's purpose. Let's think about this in the context of what Joseph has gone through. So Joseph has this dream about what's going to happen to him, that he's going to be a ruler, whatever, all that great stuff. God has to prepare him for that, and these experiences are going to happen. So just spoiler alert for the rest of this, I guess. If you need a spoiler alert for Joseph, I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. You should have read it at any point now in your life. Joseph went through this experience. He told his brothers what happened with the dreams, and they started to hate him even more. He was the favored son, which made his brothers hate him even more. He goes into this pit, and then his brothers decide to sell him for money, so that he could go to Egypt. Now he goes to Egypt, he rises to power, becomes second in command. There's a famine that enters the land, and they store all this grain. Joseph has a dream about that, and then he saves his family based on it. And every single detail of this story in 37 is to set up the rest of the story. Our experience shapes us to God's purpose. The things that are happening to you, the things that happen to me, shape us to God's purpose. It's like the just so happens moments in our lives where it's like, man, I can't even believe that happened. God is in the coincidences of our lives. God is molding us and preparing us for a purpose that's better than ourselves. And too many times we get stuck in these silly little, and they're not always silly. I don't mean to belittle this at all, but we get stuck in these moments. Like the U2 song says, you got to get yourself together. You got stuck in a moment. Don't get stuck in those moments. God has a purpose for our lives, and the experiences that we have all lead us into his purposes. Now, I don't do things right. I don't do everything correctly. There's a lot that I do wrong. We talked about it last week, a little bit on the video, not much on the video because we only went to 27 minutes. Speaking of doing things wrong, that was on me, and I apologize for that. But I see in my life all of these different experiences that have led me to where I'm at today. Picking up a guitar instead of drums. I made an offhand comment to a girl that said I wanted to be a drummer. This was like when I was in high school. Like early in high school, and she was like, you should play the guitar. Guitar players are cooler than drummers. And if a girl says that, then it's like, okay, then I guess I should play the guitar. I wanted to play the drums, but I picked up a guitar instead. When I picked up a guitar, it woke something up in me, and then I started playing guitar all the time. Then I started leading worship, and then I got involved in the AV industry, which got me to where to move up north, which got me to get re-engaged with this brewery church idea, and now here we are. And that's a big, huge blanket oversight on what's gone on in my life. Just these little details, seemingly very, very small details in my life that never seem to really add up until you look back and you're like, oh, I see the purpose now. I see what God was doing. And a lot of us have a lot of experiences that God wants to use, but we're ashamed of our past. We're ashamed of what's happened. Maybe you have been cheated on. Maybe you've done something in business and you have a lot of shame over that. God wants to use the things, the experiences that we've had in our lives to bring people to him. Someone has gone through the same thing that you have, or is going through the same thing that you're going through right now, and they need to hear it. Our experience shapes us to God's purpose. It's like those funny flowcharts that I get to see every once in a while. I know this is the second week I'm bringing up memes and stuff, but I don't care. Like those flowcharts where like everything points to the same outcome. Like the question of I saw one of them that said, "Should I eat cake?" And it says, "Are you hungry?" Yes, no, but it doesn't matter what the answers are. It always leads to eat cake, which I think is a proper thing. You know what I'm talking about? How to decide if you need a flowchart. Is it a simple task? Yes. Then great. This flowchart. Go to a flowchart. Every single answer leads to a flowchart. Our experience shapes us to God's purpose. There's nothing that doesn't shape us into God's plan for our lives. Every experience that we encounter, whether it's a good experience or a bad experience, can shape us to God's purpose. So don't throw those away. I'm going to keep going because I'm going to be way over. I can already tell. Second thing. So we might ask, say, what's God's purpose? This is great. I love the flowchart thing. Great idea, whatever. But what is God's purpose then? Well, God's purpose is changed hearts. He wants to see our hearts changed. And he wants to see people around us changed. So our experiences lead us to changed hearts, to God's purpose, which is changed hearts. And we have to get to the basis of that. We got to get to the bottom of what is really going on inside. And anytime we try to block that out, block this out, I don't want to go experience that. I don't want to process through that anymore. I'm done processing what's happened to me in my past. We can't stop because God wants to change our hearts. And the only way he's going to change our hearts is through his son Jesus. And the only way that we're going to be able to respond to that is if we're true and honest with him. I got to tell you guys that every single person deals with something. We all have issues. We all have things that we go through. We have to be honest about those things. It's not lost on me that today, when you're watching this, if you're watching this on when it debuts, is Halloween. And it just so happens that Halloween lands on a Sunday. And what I find funny is that in Halloween, we dress up to pretend to be someone or something, right? Like we put on outfits, we do this, we put on a mask to make sure that we can fool people into believing that, well, hey, look at me, I'm Superman. Like, no, you're not, because, whatever. We do the same thing on Sunday mornings. We do the same thing when we get around church people. We put on a mask, we put on a costume so that people don't think we're as bad as we are. And all that's doing is delaying God's purpose of changed hearts in our lives. When we cover that up and be like, no, I don't have anything going on. I don't struggle with anything. I'm a perfect human being. I got nothing to worry about. I got no issues whatsoever. We lose our way when we show up with a mask on. Not like a literal mask. You have to make that delineation now. It says that they tore Joseph's coat and they dipped it in blood. And so Joseph didn't have his coat anymore. But the coat is not what made Joseph Joseph. His heart was God's. His heart belonged to God. And so it didn't matter what Joseph wore. He was a good person. And that would continue to follow through Joseph's life. He was an upstanding, trustworthy person. The coat had nothing to do with it. It wasn't the coat that made him, but his heart. Matthew 15:11, Jesus is talking to some religious people. He did that a lot. And in Matthew 15:11, Jesus says that it's not what goes into a man that defiles him, but what comes out of the mouth. What is what proceeds from the heart. It's what's from within. From the heart is what defiles us. It's not about, they were having an issue about the disciples not washing their hands before they ate. And so they said, you're breaking the rules here. And Jesus is like, it's not about what goes into your mouth. It's about what comes out. What you put into your mouth, food, it goes away. It exits the body. Yeah, you talked about poop in a message one time. Jesus did. You should read the Bible sometime. It's pretty cool. He says it's from the heart that defiles us. And too many times we cloak our heart in something that's like, no, I'm fine. This is good. I'm having a great time. It's from within. It's from the heart that defiles us. And God's purpose is changed hearts. And until we can understand that it's from within, it's not an experience around you that has made you bad. It's not something that's happened to you. It's from within. So many times we play the victim card in life. And it's like, stop being a victim. There are things that happen to us, yes, and I feel poorly. I feel bad about that. But we have to keep going. Yes, things happen to us. It's bad. Sometimes we got to process those things and keep moving on. God's purpose has changed hearts. And changed hearts persevere through resistance. Joseph, in this time, he perseveres. This changed heart. He's going to follow God. I don't know if he saw his dad change. I don't know what the change was for Joseph and his family, but like I said, he's persevering through some pretty heavy resistance. At what point do we say, okay, never mind, I don't want to be the supervisor anymore. I see my brothers hate me. I see they want to kill me. Now they've thrown me in a pit. I'm done being the good guy. I wonder what Joseph felt like when they started to pull him back out of the pit. He probably was thinking, oh, good, they had a change of heart. And how disheartening that would be when they pull him out of the pit. He's about to hug his brothers and thank him because they just rescued him from the pit that they threw him in. And then he sees the transaction taking place with these other people, which were actually relatives, long-distance relatives, going back to Abraham and going back to Isaac, the Ishmaelites, Ishmael, get it? How disheartening that would be for Joe. But he doesn't let it get him down. That changed heart perseveres through resistance. There's going to be people in your lives that are put in place that are going to be resistance for you. There's going to be decisions that you have to make in life. There's decisions that I have to make in life that are going to face resistance. And I'm going to have to make a choice. Am I going to follow God or am I going to follow Brian? Because I know following God is going to lead to resistance. I just know that. Based on the way that culture is right now, based on the way that things are going in the United States of America, I can almost guarantee you that there is going to be resistance to the way of Jesus, to the way of the cross. And there's two options for us. If we have a changed heart, it's going to persevere through resistance. But if we've been faking it this whole time, we're going to veer to the wrong direction. And we're going to lose good people to this cause. Life is going to be hard. The paradox is that Jesus says that you will face trials. You will face issues. There's going to be people that hate you. People are going to hate you because you're following me. And I know this because they hated me first. From that same mouth, Jesus says that he came to give us an abundant life. From that same mouth, Jesus says that his yoke is easy and his burden is light. It seems like a paradox, doesn't it? Or maybe, just maybe, following Jesus has a different meaning than how far ahead we can get in life. Maybe this resistance that we're going to feel it in our bank accounts. Maybe we're going to feel it with our friends. Maybe we're going to feel it on the decisions that we make. Maybe we surround ourselves with people who love to drink way too much alcohol, and now we've been drinking too much alcohol. And so it's like, man, I think I need to stop hanging out with those friends, and I need to find some people that are going to hold me accountable. And I know that's weird coming from somebody who planted a church and a brewery, but we practice accountability. And there's people in the church who are alcoholics that we hold accountable. And we take care of them. And they've lost friends that were alcoholics as well, but they missed their drinking buddy. Maybe our fulfillment, maybe what Jesus is trying to tell us is that our fulfillment is not going to be through this stuff. But if we have a changed heart, it's going to persevere through the stuff to see the peace of God, to see what Jesus has for us. The Apostle Paul wrote in 2 Timothy chapter 4, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. It's near the end of his life, and he's equipping Timothy to go and preach the word, to be strong in the word. And he's giving him this example of, I fought the good fight, I finished the race. I persevered. Paul was a guy who had a changed heart, and he persevered through the resistance. I hope we can say the same thing. The last thing I want to say is play your part in His purpose. See, your experience, your changed heart, and what you've had to persevere through has uniquely equipped you for the role God has for you. Joseph gets a role in this. He's uniquely gifted. He's a trustworthy person. He's a man of upstanding character, and it's going to be in his favor eventually. God is equipping him through all of these experiences because of his changed heart to play a part. And it dawned on me, I don't know why it took me so long to figure this out, but Joseph's part in the grand scheme of the story is a small part. He's a side story. He's a side part in the history of the church, in the history of Jesus. He's not even in the lineage of Jesus. The one upstanding brother, the one who's the most trustworthy, his part is not to be the one of the greatest honor. That belongs to Judah, the one who decided to sell Joseph. Who was like, oh, let's not kill him because he's our brother. Judah's the one who, through him, Jesus comes. Joseph wasn't. Joseph played the part in Judah's redemption. And sometimes we're not going to be the big dog. We're not going to be the one who gets all the credit. We're not going to be the ones who get to have the parade and have people throw stuff at us and say, "Yay!" I don't know when that would ever happen, but just go with me. I'm exaggerating some. Sometimes you're not going to be the first chair. That's a musical term. When you got a band and people are all in a line of chairs, the first chair is the most important one, the one that does. Everything else is a supporting part. I'll do this with the band as well. Nobody remembers the bass player. They remember the drummer, the guitar player, the lead singer, the bass player. You're like, I can't remember who the bass player is. To be a bass player is somebody who is willing to make everybody else sound good, that brings everything together. Know your part. Play your part in His purpose. Don't try to play somebody else's part. That's what it gets down to. Our experiences, our things, the things that we've gone through have prepared us for a plan, for a purpose, for God's purpose. And this changed heart. And when our hearts are changed, we can change the hearts of people around us. Because we've been changed. We get to take a lot from the story of Joseph and from this, and I hope you guys come back because we're going to be diving into the life of Joseph and all these little details, all of these little experiences that Joseph has. We're going to see play out on this grand stage and see God's purpose behind all of it. And I hope it's an encouragement to you. I know it's an encouragement to me. To see the things that seemingly just are going against Joseph eventually work in his favor. It says in Romans that we know that all things work together for the good of those who serve Him. And we don't stop there, according to His purpose. It's going to work towards His purpose, and His purpose is changed hearts to bring people to Him. Are you ready for that journey? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the love you have for us, God, that you've given us purpose. God, I pray that we can use these experiences in our lives to bring people to you. Not to make ourselves look good or to puff ourselves up, but God, it would bring people to you. This redemption story that we have, this restoration story. Thank you for your love, for your mercy, and for your grace. It's in your name, the name of Jesus, that we pray. Amen.